Tuesday, Texas Livestream is live on the On Texas Football channel. Welcome in, everybody. Aaron Hogan, Rod Babers, Jeff Howe. Just had a little visit with Bobby Burton a minute ago. Everybody checking in. That's a good thing. Welcome in as we count down the days. I believe by my calendar, we are 60 days to 0 week in college football. That's 2 months. That's pretty cool. We're 67 days to the Longhorns showdown with Ohio State. We're inside 3 weeks now to SEC Media Days in Atlanta, Georgia. So the football season fast approaching. Busy June with recruiting. We'll certainly dive in there. Longhorns hitting big over the weekend. I know it's been a big conversation on Texas all weekend and into Monday and Tuesday, but here we are to talk about it with you. Rod Babers had a sit down with the head coach of the Longhorns that just dropped this today on the Third and Longhorn podcast. Jeff Howe's got us covered on recruiting, and I'll just kind of, navigate and play John Stockton point guard. Appreciate everybody. Ask your questions. We want your thoughts and observations, questions, and how we can drive the conversation in your direction as well. Just hit us up on that. Matthew produces, and we get rolling, guys. Rod, let's start with that. The Third and Longhorn podcast you're a part of, in addition to all your great work here on Texas football, came out today. It was a sit-down, and I believe, if I have this right, you guys went to the UT facility to interview Sark, which some of the clips I saw were really cool in that it's kind of Sark's element, and you guys were in it, and former players, and I don't know, some of the early highlights I've seen of it were, he's kind of in his place, and you guys got the raw, kind of somewhat unfiltered version of Steve Sarkisian talking to you guys as former players and in his locker room, in his facility. I thought that was pretty cool. Yeah,
I think the goal was he wanted him to be as comfortable as possible. Sark's always comfortable for the media, but I think they wanted Sark to feel like, he was at home. Essentially, he was hosting us as a group at Third and Longhorn, and it was, probably my maybe third interview with Sark like that, just in an interview, but it was easily, to me, the most revealing I think Sark has been. I think now he is not only comfortable with the media, but comfortable now being the figurehead of Texas football as well. And he talked a lot about his vision and talked a lot about, and I've said this before too, how now, he didn't say this, but he described it, how it's right now, the sales pitch for Texas is probably better than it's ever been in recruiting. And it's almost impossible to negatively recruit against Texas right now. And he talks about like all the different things that he can point out to, and I didn't realize that he hadn't been to Austin before. He became agreed to become the head coach at Texas. Like that was his first time. And he talked about how now he can pitch Austin too, because he couldn't pitch Austin back in the day because it wasn't, he had no passion for it. And, he wasn't a true Austin. He wasn't a member of the community. Now, as a member of the community, he talks about how he pitches the city, not only the program and how great it's doing, but he talked about also the family. And this is kind of reminding me of Mac Brown. He heard him discuss this. He talked about his culture of authenticity and, the culture days they have where, they share, was it Culture Wednesdays, I believe it is.
Yeah.
They share different stories and testimonies with each other. And it's about them growing closer, right? The connection between the teammates growing closer, that bond growing stronger. Mac presented it different. He was talking about family all the time. Like, hey, it's about family, right? I always tell people I committed to Sally. I didn't commit to Mac. That's the truth. Right? I was on the phone with Sally. Like that's how much of a family was. And the coaches brought their families around, and Mac would have my mom still asks about Mac Brown because Mac Brown sold family and he backed it up and it paid off. And Sark started echoing some of that too. He talked about how, it's part of, even with Third and Longhorn guys, he said part of his sales pitch is now, hey, the family, it comes full circle, right? Even when you're done in your playing days, he talked about now I'm the head coach. He said, I get to help you guys out in this individual business venture that you guys are doing with Third and Longhorn, and I get to give back to Longhorn Nation, right? To you guys who are once part of the team. We talked about how opening the doors of Moncrief open to all the former players, and he got into some of that stuff. So that actually touched me as a player because I haven't heard him talk about that level of the Texas family and that being part of his vision. I'm sure it was, but I hadn't heard him talk about it yet. And it was fun to hear him say, now he is thinking about, the full circle vision for these players that when they get, Matthew talk about all the time, when you get done playing, right? It's a 40-year decision, not a 4-year decision. He's starting to echo some of those things about how the university, when you're talking about the academic part of it, you're talking about the social element, when you're talking about the city, when you're talking about the connections you have with the 500,000+ living alumni. He's starting to talk about some of those things. And I remember that being part of Mac's, big pitch, was that's why Texas is so unique and so powerful. And when players start to figure that out, he said, honestly, now guys are figuring it out earlier than they were when I was playing. I made a good choice as a 17-year-old. Now these guys are making, great choices as 17-year-olds to choose University of Texas. It is actually, like I said, if you want to live in Texas, I don't know if there's a better place in the country to play football right now than Texas. And that's basically kind of what he pitched to us. And I think he's right. I've said that before on these airways, that there's no way to negatively recruit against Texas right now. That's what makes him a monster. Your only negative recruiting pitch is you may not get to play because there's too much talent there.
Yep.
And then that's a knock on you. And Sark always, he flipped it out. That's a knock on you then. So, you ain't good enough. That you ain't good enough to make that team come make our team. That's a shaky sales pitch for anybody. So that's what Sark has kind of turned, the program into now. A program that is really tough to recruit against. And when they start recruiting somewhere, no matter where they're from or who they committed to, you got to pick up the phone. You got to consider Texas, because it's right now checking all the boxes.
Yeah, well, I think that's well said. I can't wait to watch the whole thing, about 55 minutes with Sark on the Third and Longhorn podcast, and that is out as of this afternoon. And Jeff, I don't remember who the recruit was. Jerry was telling me about, a recruit that called around to former players at all the schools that he was considering, and none of them lived in the town of where the school is, right? No, none of them stayed where they were. Yet when he started doing the same thing at Texas, it was Rod, and all these guys live here in Austin. They all in the long term, selling obviously the power of Texas, the current, the now, the opportunity, but NIL space in Texas. But all your former Longhorns, they all live here. They've all started businesses here. They've all done post-career here. That's very rare around college football when you think about it. They don't stay in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, or in Athens, Georgia. You guys, Rod, are all in Austin, and Jeff, I'm sure that resonates with parents, and that sells it. But the players have all come back that help build what Texas is. That's huge too, because parents can then, because you guys are parents. I'm a parent. You see what's the long term. I see now, but what does that look like 10 years from now? Oh, I see that they can be in Austin and grow in that thriving young city. That's pretty cool.
When I'll credit Rod with this, when I realized how big that was, Rod, I don't know if you even remember this, Rod, but you told me a story. You were at your apartment complex taking a walk in the morning, saw somebody had a really cool like tiger stripe, little baby pit bull. You're like, oh, that's a cool dog. You found the dog's owner was Brian Bosworth. The fact that Brian Bosworth decided to move to Austin, Texas, should tell you everything you need to know about life in Austin.
That's true.
I think too, and I haven't seen the whole thing. In the interest of full disclosure, I've seen parts of it, and that's I'll sit down and watch the whole thing when we're done here. But the one thing I think what is evident, and you hear Sark talk about Texas before he got the job, his impressions of the job, what he assumed it was, and then almost how relieved he was that Austin was this big, thriving metropolis, a kind of a pop culture mecca. The job wasn't too big for Sark. And I think in different ways, it was too big for Charlie Strong, to where it was overwhelming to be the head coach of Texas.
Yeah.
And I think it was too big for Tom Herman in terms of it changed him so much for the worse that he wasn't the same guy Texas hired by the time his tenure was over. So the job wasn't too big for Sark. He understood it. He got the gravity of it. And, the only thing that has gone wrong in Sark's tenure, and it really wasn't his fault, because of the COVID restrictions and stadium construction, he probably would have got to work on weeding out guys that were disruptive to the culture. He probably would have gotten to that process earlier had the conditions not been what they were. And maybe they go 7-5 or 8-4 instead of 5-7 that first year. But in a lot of ways, 5-7 needed to happen because it gave him a really crystal clear idea of these are the guys that we can build around, that we can count on. This is the group of guys that need to go. And for the most part, going into year two, that group of guys that they could count on from year one, that's Jahdae Barron and Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat and the guys that have helped this program get to back-to-back semifinals appearances. And we don't need to name the guys that were in trouble because they were pretty much one and done with Sark. So I think that those are the two big things. I think the job wasn't too big for him, and understanding that, yeah, the culture did really need an overhaul, maybe more than thought initially.
Yeah. Well, and in addition to the Third and Longhorn podcast, which is now out, Sark is also on the cover of Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine that's coming out now into July and in newsstands. And our friend Mike Craven wrote the story, the 2,500 word story on Sark, and in it he talks about what you talked about, Rod, the Culture Wednesdays. And he said he took the first, in that article that Mike wrote, he took the first year to, as you said, Jeff, maybe he was behind because of stadium renovations and they were separated and everything, COVID and everything was happening. It took him a year to kind of figure out that, we're just not connected. We're a bunch of I guys. We're not a bunch of we guys, and we're not together. And that's when he started going on this search for the Culture Wednesdays idea. And he talked to coaches and leadership experts all over the country of how do I do this? And he came back, go to a movie on Fridays before games and all this stuff. And Sark was like, man, I got to go faster than that. So like during the off season, he started these Culture Wednesdays. And as we now know, he was the first one to stand up and tell his testimony, tell his story, share his, worst days and all that kind of stuff, which really began that. And since then we've seen the culture build, and now it's year 5 and it's just being handed down, which is really great to see. Also, for Sark, it's just the idea that, with the new NIL Go portal clearinghouse and the whole house settlement, which is 1 week away, y'all. It starts next Tuesday, July 1st. He, to selling Austin, Rod, he got to, Bijan Mustardson, right? On a bad team. That was not a good team. They weren't playing for championships, but Bijan Mustardson was this perfectly built, marketing plan with mustard built on his name, which they're still selling at HEB right now, for crying out loud. But that happened when they were 5-7 into his first year. And that's a selling point to say, even in Austin, whatever the restrictions are coming for the clearinghouse and all these things, the opportunities here are greater than anywhere you'll go. If you put yourself out there and will market yourself, Bijan, still a great example on that for me.
Yeah. Well, I think they probably have a ton of those, right? With guys behind these things we don't know about, the most obvious ones. But I do think that, in one of to me, the bright, shining examples that Sark's vision was headed in the right direction. And we just talked about it was honestly when Arch Manning committed.
Yeah. 3 years ago, Monday.
Right. Because we hadn't seen the vision materialize. We hadn't seen it. There were signs of, okay, Sark, I see him tweaking some things there. I see him doing this, doing that, Culture Wednesdays. But we hadn't seen it materialize on the field just yet. It's just the last couple of years that's happened. But I said at the time, so when the Mannings, they did their homework. I mean, they do the research. I mean, they got references on references. They know, they talk to everybody, know everybody that Sark though and knew back in the day. So they talk to all of them. I guarantee, like, what's up with this dude? Is he the real deal? Let me know. I need to know. Yeah. And people don't lie to the Mannings. They just don't. And you tell the Mannings the truth because one day you might want something from the Mannings behind the scenes, right? So I think they got the real truth about the authenticity of Sark and his transformation as a person and a coach. And I think they're one of the first true believers, if you will, of that. Sark's real. And I was like, man, if the Mannings believe in Sark's vision, who am I to question whether the vision is right? I'm not privy to what they're privy to. They got more football knowledge than me. And I think, to me, I remember that being one of my kind of moments where I thought, okay, it must be real. Like, how do you get a Manning? Mannings would have saw through it if it was fake. They'd been like, nah, that thing's going to crumble, man. That ain't heading in the right direction. No, they did the research. And I think their research came that Texas was going to continue on this trajectory, and it was going to put Arch in the perfect position when he was ready to start to take them to the promised land. And it does seem like the next 2 years, Texas is in the best position they've been in since 04, 05.
Yeah. I
guess to win a national title.
Well, coming up later on in the live stream, there's a doubter out there, of course, and leave it to Steve Spurrier, who's never been a fan of the Mannings, it doesn't feel like to me, all the way back to the Peyton days at Tennessee. But Steve Spurrier casting some doubt. We'll get into some shade that came from the former Florida coach and Heisman Trophy winner coming up. But I think that's well said that they – and Jeff, you know this covering recruiting like you do. I mean, the Manning seal of approval, that means a lot to a guy like Rajah Bell and his son Dia. That means a lot to all these parents. Like, oh, man, if the Mannings are in – I can be in. I can be in on that. That feels solid to me because parents are just wanting the best for their kids and not being sold a bill of goods and the stuff that is that real or not? The Mannings put their stamp on it. Okay, I'm in. And now we're seeing the results into year 5.
Texas right now reminds me of just the culture in terms of Rod. You mentioned family earlier. It really reminds me. Kind of started Rod while you were on campus and continued through that national championship run throughout the 2000s. Like the parents of players are probably some of your best recruiters right now.
Yeah.
And on the visit weekends, like we hear about it, like, hey, if somebody's committed to Texas and they're on the visit, like the parents are, in the ear of the uncommitted prospects parents and just telling them how real Sark is. And I think too, Sark from an authenticity standpoint, and again, take a drink if you're ready for me to bash Tom Herman, but after what Texas went through because of their issues on the job, players didn't really get to connect with Charlie Strong or Tom Herman. It was tough to connect with both those guys, and quite frankly, for Tom Herman, he made it difficult to connect with him. And Aaron, you said it, like players, they know BS when they see it, like they'll call it out. And I think that more than anything in the head coach is what Texas needed at the time. They needed somebody to come in and be 100% real. They needed some authenticity. And, I remember, even though 2021 was what it was, I'll never forget being at Big 12 Media Days and talking to Bijan. And we're talking about the differences between, the new staff and the previous staff. And he said, man, he's like, I like them when I get to the building. It's just about football. It's not about anything else. It's 100% about ball. And we know Sark is about ball. But I think he was, from a personality standpoint and authenticity standpoint, he was the guy Texas needed right at that moment. And I've been in a ballroom during one of his Texas High School Coaches Association lectures, and he's up front with it. He's like, look, I've got a past. He's like, Google it. I'm not going to run from it. It's right there. So, everything on me, he's like, I'm an open book. So I just like that from Sark, kind of what, for the most part, what you see is what you get. And
I think that's what, we don't talk about it enough, but it is kind of one of the lifebloods of sports at Texas. The boosters and the donors like them too.
Yeah.
They like them.
They built the bridge to all of them.
Yeah, Tom Herman, we all know Coach Herman had, some Coach Herman, he was that mincing meathead stuff. Like at times he could be a bit, it could be, his conduct could be unbecoming for a head coach. I'll just say that. And not all the boosters like that. And there's some of his antics, I think, also, upset some of the boosters and the donors. And Charlie Strong, he didn't win enough games, but he also didn't want to. He didn't want to schmooze, and he didn't want to network with the boosters and the donors. Hell, I remember Mac bringing boosters and donors to practice, like literally, and he would introduce them and during practice, I guess because of some rules or something, but he'd make sure that at practice he would introduce them and have them say something, and then it kind of I don't even know. He's like, yeah, y'all can introduce yourself if you want to. That's up to y'all. This is one of the most powerful men in the country. You can, he's at practice. If you want to introduce yourself, please go ahead. So Mac made sure that he played that game. Sark is likable and, like I said, authentic, and he's got a positive energy about him. Like he's got this really positive energy about him constantly, and I think that's something that's been maybe underappreciated about him because he's had so much success here in Texas. That behind the scenes they like him. The administration, the administrative people, and the boosters and the donors also like what he brings to the table.
Well, great stuff. The Third and Longhorn podcast. I think you guys said it, though. I think at the end of the day, he is to the idea that the job wasn't too big for him. He learned that from Pete Carroll at a lot of levels out at USC, watching handle that, in a huge market like Los Angeles, Nick Saban. Because one thing about Mac Brown when he got to Texas, you got to remember way back in the 90s, late 90s, Darrell Royal was here, and Coach Royal kind of taught him how, Hey, these are the boosters you got to invite to practice. These are the boosters you got to answer the phone every time. These are the big money guys that, you could probably let DeLoss handle, and you'll be good on that. He had that, mentor, whereas, Charlie and Tom didn't have those guys. But at the same time, Sark learned that from Pete Carroll, from Nick Saban, and then has found his way. And he's give him a lot of credit because the way he acted and didn't connect with people and some of his off-field stuff was, to the Tom Herman point, was why he got fired at USC, right? I mean, there was, and he got through that, and he's come out the other side a very authentic, more genuine, real person, and he shares that with his team. So good stuff. Third and Longhorn podcast coming out. Also the cover of the Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. Obviously, a lot of expectations for Steve Sarkisian. I want to ask Jeff Howe a real deep or an interesting recruiting question and get some updates on what's to come. But Rod, give him our first partner out there on our Tuesday night live stream. Thank you very much, because we appreciate Andy Ludicky, I believe, is to launch us here on a Tuesday night.
Yep. Thank you very much to Andy Ludicky and his team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football. Listen, if you and someone like me who have your hands in different businesses, well, my friend Andy and his team can help you find different businesses that will fit your skill sets and your time allotment and your financial goals. You reach out to him at 404-973-9901. That's 404-973-9901. And Andy and his team will take you through a very meticulous process that will help you actually get some financial security. I mean, that's actually what Andy and his team are all about. And right now you can reach out to Andy. He understands that franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your financial destiny, you can do it today by reaching out to Andy and his team at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. That's Andy at myperfectfranchise.net, 404-973-9901. And we appreciate Andy Ludicky and his team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football and sponsoring our Tuesday night live stream.
We'll launch into recruiting, Jeff, with this about what's happened over the weekend. I'm a casual observer of recruiting. I know you and Jerry and CJ and everybody, Bobby, do an amazing job. That's why I follow you guys and listen to On Texas Football all the time. But I mean, to consider that the Longhorns went into Birmingham, Alabama, and tried a defensive tackle who's got a Sunday future potentially based on the scouting report into Birmingham, Alabama, and pluck him out. And they had Justice Terry out of Manchester, Georgia last cycle, and they're going into SEC territory and bringing in defensive linemen. That's the power, I think, of what we just talked about with Sark. Obviously, the development of defensive tackles, and now you add Richard Wesley from the West Coast, Josiah Sharma out of California, because Rod's done the deep dive research on where the best NFL players are coming from, and defensive linemen and defensive tackles are coming from Texas, the Deep South, and California, right? So, but to go in and pull Josiah Sharma and then Richard Wesley, if he does commit, out of California, and the guys Manchester, Georgia, and Birmingham, Alabama, and Mississippi. That's huge. Am I wrong on this? I mean, that's massive to start building your defensive and offensive lines with the best players in the country from places normally Texas wasn't getting players.
Yeah, I mean, Rodney Cleveland was committed to Alabama at one point.
Yeah,
that was a player Alabama wanted. So it's not like you're just getting somebody off the scrap heap. The SEC is the ultimate line of scrimmage league. I've said that for years, and this was the first year where I really, I wasn't sad not watching as much Big 12 as I usually do, but I really week in, week out, I'm watching the SEC, and it was true even last year as much as ever. Like, the teams in the SEC that had the best line of scrimmage talent were the teams that finished higher in the conference standings. Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, just go down the road. What I'll say, though, is, you look at where they're targeting guys, though. Yes, the SEC has the best line of scrimmage talent. If you're Texas, you got to recruit the best line of scrimmage talent, not just in the region. You got to go get the best line of scrimmage talent in the country if you want to win a national championship. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the schools Texas is up against for these line of scrimmage guys, which is they're not going to win all these battles. They're not battling Texas Tech and Baylor and TCU and Houston, with all due respect to those schools. You look at the finalists for these guys that Texas is in a fight with, it's Michigan, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Clemson, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Penn State. Teams that believe they should year in, year out be competing for the CFP, a spot in the CFP in the national championship. That's who Texas is competing with for line of scrimmage talent. And they're at the point now where they're able to get their share. And Rod, like you said, the only negative, there are two negatives kids from the deep South you can use to recruit against Texas in terms of, negative recruiting. One, do you really want to go that far from home if distance from home ends up being a factor? Mm-hmm. And two, when are you going to get on the field? How many guys are in front of you? Like that. That's all they're down to. You can't sell. They don't develop guys. You put 23 draft picks into the NFL the last 2 years. You can't sell, the culture's rotten. It's culture of entitlement. Not anymore. Sark has remedied that and continues to work on it. So going back to Sark real quick in this vein, Rod, we talked about this. I really believe with the way Sark is recruiting right now and the potential for the quarterback pipeline that he's got starting with Arch Manning and then Trey Owens or KJ Lacey and Diabell after that, Sark has the potential to take Texas to a level that even Mac Brown didn't take it to.
Oh, yeah. I agree with that.
I really think Sark has, in the NIL era, the resources to come the closest any Texas coach has come to replicating what Coach Royal did since Coach Royal.
Yeah, because he's got advantages, honestly, that Mac and Coach Royal didn't have, right? He's got NIL, as you talked about. He's got the transfer portal. He's got some stress, all right, that Mac and DK didn't have either, right? Social media, things like that. Like you got some things you got to worry about, but you also got a lot of advantages if you play them right. And at Texas, with the resources that Texas has, I'm with you. I think he can reach heights unprecedented potentially because he's been able to manipulate, all right, all those different mechanisms to his advantage. And
evolve as it changes. We're all watching it warp speed change.
Yes,
he's evolved quickly with it.
Yeah, and he stated essentially that he's not with the current state of NIL and all that with the transfer portal, but he also understands but I'm not going to hate on it because I need these players, all right. So he's kind of stated I don't really like what's going on, but hey, at this point,
adapt or die.
Don't make the player hate the game. So I'm with you. I agree with you, Jeff. I think he has that chance. Will he do it? I mean, ultimately, we don't know. The Arch years will determine a lot. These next 2 years will determine a ton about what the expectation level should be for Sark, and ultimately how quickly he is evolving into being an elite coach. He's on the cusp. We all see it. Because he has grown as a coach. I've documented. I told people initially, listen, I wasn't initially a Sark guy. When he hired him, I said, he's got to win me over. I'm tired of just automatically saying, I think Charlie Strong's great. I think Tom is great. And then I get sold a bill of goods. I was like, no, I'm in the Missouri state of mind. You got to show me. And when you show me, then I will be a devoted and loyal, right, fan. I'll do it. And honestly, he did. I went through the stages of it. I remember the stages of, actually, I think I kind of like this guy. I like what he's been saying. And actually, truth is, I remember the K-State game in 2021 was when I was like, I got to think I'm a Sark guy now. All right. Yeah. I like what he did because it took a lot to win that game. And they had no business winning that game. That was just Sark put it all on the table, letting them hang, and they found a way to win that game. I was like, all right, he showed me enough. And then, of course, over time, boom, I think we've all become full-on Sark fans and see his potential. We see what CDC saw there. So that's the next step for him. He's got to beat Kirby Smart to do it. But there's no doubt Sark can start. It can be a dynastic run for Sark here. He can go on. I don't want to jinx it or anything, but if he plays it right with Arch, and then he's going to have great quarterbacks. And that was the key to Mac's dynastic run, if you will, was that he got the quarterbacks, man. The quarterback, you had Major, you had Sims, hell, a Chance Mox sprinkled in there. You had V. Wide, and you had Colt. That's the key if you want to do it. And I think Sark's got the master key because he's got the Manning.
And we mentioned potential, Rod. He's got the potential to do that. And I'll channel what Coach Royal was famous for saying, one of his famous sayings: "Potential means you ain't done a damn thing yet." So I think that's how Sark is working every day.
Yeah, I think that's right. Well, and again, he, as you say, the advantages he's had, Royal and Mac didn't have the transfer portal, but the transfer portal can be a problem too, because guys can just jump right out of here if you're not getting it right. So that's big. But yeah, I think you guys are just said it, because Rod, and you also know this, you and I did at a previous incarnation in media, we did the show the night he was hired.
That's right.
So we had some good debates that night, and you absolutely were show me, and I was trying to pump it up. This is a great hire or whatever. And then we had some good debates that night. That was the first.
It was a great hire, yeah.
That was the third. Well, I didn't know. I mean, I was, going on what we know, but you were rightful, like most Longhorn fans, to be skeptical. And here's the optimistic part. Here's what it could be. Where Longhorn fans were in the tumble dry of the dryer at that point of football, and just wanted some
battered fan syndrome.
Battered fan syndrome, and it's turned in the corner.
I wasn't quite all the way to the extreme to where Rod was at that point, because we did a Longhorn blitz, I think that afternoon or maybe the next day, and Rod laid it all out. And I probably wasn't with Rod to that extent, but I knew, I was like, I got all pumped up about the Tom Herman hire, and that went the way it was. I ain't falling for the banana in the tailpipe again. Like, that ain't gonna happen. I ain't doing that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you had to look at what the positives and negatives could be, but Longhorn fans were in that place for sure. Show me, and Sark certainly has. And it's so funny in the podcast on Third and Longhorn to hear him say he had never been to Austin before, ever in his life. Didn't know. He thought it was like Lubbock with tumbleweeds and dirt, and how times have changed in Texas. Let's get to some recruiting hardcore, a little red meat recruiting here, Jeff, because we mentioned Richard Wesley. On Texas fans know that. Bodney, Cleveland coming in, and so 15 commitments now. And then there's a lot of dates. I know Bobby Burton and the team have worked to put a graphic up. Matthew, can you throw this up? These are the dates. So this week, Xavier Crowell, the running back, will make a decision. Run through those with us, Jeff, and just kind of give me your thoughts on some of the big names where the Longhorns and Longhorn fans need to be paying attention to upcoming commitment schedule.
Yeah, we'll just go through the ones this week, starting with Xavier Crowell on Thursday. I think that one is leaning Alabama, but Texas is in the fight, trying to convince Texas. The advantage Texas has is if he commits to Texas, he's the only running back in the class at this point. So Alabama flipped a running back prospect from Illinois earlier in the week. So they're still going in on Xavier Crowell, but I still think that's Alabama. Chase Calicut, the safety / big nickel hybrid linebacker out of North Shore, he's trending to Georgia. Bobby Burton reported that this afternoon over at ontexasfootball.com. Got Malachi Lee, the big. Check this out, guys. Malachi Lee is an 85-inch wingspan. He's a massive human being out of the state of Hawaii. Malachi Lee, and I'll get to John Turntine in a minute. A lot of the battles for these offensive linemen are coming down to Texas and Michigan, where Texas and Michigan are pretty much the two main contenders. So I think Malachi Lee is probably coming down. Texas is in the mix. I think Michigan's in the mix. Georgia, Alabama also very much hanging around. Damari Simeon is really interesting because he's kind of been on the periphery, and Texas likes him. Texas wants him. Ohio State's been in that recruitment, but that one is trending to Texas. And then Xavier Griffin, I do wonder Texas going as hard as they have after Tyler Atkinson, how much that's going to impact Xavier Griffin, because it's kind of like the John Turntine, Felix Ojo dynamic. I don't know if both those guys, even though they're little different players, I don't know if both those guys are going to end up at the same school. So keep an eye on that Xavier Griffin decision, and that could tell you one way or the other, how things may or may not be leaning with Tyler Atkinson, who's just coming off a great visit to Texas. But I mentioned John Turntine, the big development with him, really, really talented offensive tackle out of North Crowley in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Jerry Hamilton reported over at ontexasfootball.com earlier today, Texas A&M is out for John Turntine. So that is a Texas-Michigan battle. It's come down to academics. It's all about, a pre-med program. He wants to be a doctor, so it's Texas and Michigan. So Texas, to get A&M out of the picture, and now you're just battling Michigan, that is a really good sign for Texas and John Turntine.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, and if you want to be a doctor, you want to live in Michigan when after you're a doctor, or do you want to go to into Texas, which is where he's from, obviously, which is that's one to look at long term, because obviously he and his family are. So that's this week. So obviously 1 Thursday, 3 on Friday with Calicut and Lee and Simeon, and then a big one over the weekend with Xavier Griffin, the linebacker out of the state of Georgia, number 2 linebacker in the country. Those will all be watched here by the next time we do a On Texas Football Tuesday stream. Any of those names in the next 3 columns, Jeff? You mentioned Turntine, but what about Trenton Henderson? What about Jalen Lott? Obviously, the legacy at Texas. That's the name Longhorn fans are really interested in Jamarion Carlton up there in the 254. Some of those names. What are the ones that jump out to you? Caden Finley, Jermichael's son. What are you watching there?
A lot of love for anybody with that 254 area code in the phone number. Kendall Graville's been trending. A big defensive lineman out of Fort Myers, been trending to Texas for a while. He told CJ Vogel after his visit, he was at the airport getting ready to go back to Fort Myers and said, "Hey, Texas is still number one on my list." So I think everybody can kind of read the tea leaves there unless something changes. Texas sitting in a really good spot for Kendall Graville. Trenton, I won't go down all these guys. Trenton Henderson is really interesting because Texas made his final 3. So the Longhorns are very much in the mix for him. Texas surging late in that recruitment. They've had a lot of ground to make up, but they've done a really good job. I feel like the way things are trending as of right now, with Caden Finley and Jalen Lott, I feel like Caden Finley is more likely to end up at Texas right now than Jalen Lott. I think USC and Oregon have made really good pitches for Lott. His sister runs track at USC. So you got some family dynamic working there. And then Oregon, obviously, it's tough to turn down Dan Lanning and Phil Knight and the NIL machine that they've got there. And, Samari Matthews is one. And Rod, I don't know if you've had a chance to really get down in the nitty-gritty and watch this tape yet.
Yeah, I checked it out.
I think he's a really, really talented, just a really good corner prospect out of the state of North Carolina. It's a Texas-South Carolina battle. Just got done with his official visit to South Carolina. Now, he's going to decide on the 11th. But Samari Matthews, one of my favorite guys in the class. I should probably stop saying that because every time I've said that about Sammy Roseboro, Jalen Lott, whoever, seems like that guy ends up trending away from Texas. But I love me some Samari Matthews. I think he's a phenomenal corner prospect.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. That's great stuff right there. Outstanding. And that's what's to come. A lot through the 4th of July, the Independence Day holiday, and then into early July. And obviously, Jeff, the official weekends, right, are done. And we know that right there. Those are shut down. And then the dead period hits coming up. Obviously, July 1st, next Tuesday, will be the start of the new world order for college athletics with the House settlement and salary revenue sharing and the NIL Go portal and all that fires up. So a lot coming into the month of July for the Texas Longhorns. Let's let
Horn 7. I know I just can't. I don't want to say anything negative about Samari Matthews at this point, but yes, I will stop touting my favorite prospects in the class until they commit to Texas. How about that?
I've watched him, and I'm with you. I think he's a natural corner.
Yes,
he's basically one of the most natural corners I think I've seen on film in a long time. Like, he's just everything about him: the movement, the hips, the feet, the hands, the eyes, the way he plays the position. I mean, I agree with you. I think he can. He projects.
What does that mean, Rod? Natural corner. Like, I mean, you just said it, the fluidity, but like when you watch who do you watch in the NFL or college did you study that is a natural corner?
Oh, I like Patrick Surtain. I guess you can just I think he's defensive player of the year. But yeah, I mean, some guys are just athletes and then they're converting, right? It happens at every position, right? I used to say that about Sam Ellinger. I was like, yeah, he's just an athlete learning how to play quarterback. You'll figure out how to play quarterback soon. Right now, he's just an athlete out there. It happens at a lot of positions. Some guys are just like freaky athletes. But he is a natural corner. And what I mean by that is it's like his the way that he sees the game, his eyes, the eye discipline he has. If you just look at his feet, he's very patient. Sometimes young DBs, you can tell, sometimes they're not patient. He's very patient. His feet are patient. He's got really loose hips. Loose hips is basically when the guy can flip his hips real quick either way. And you don't have to have loose hips, but it really helps to play in the cornerback position to be able to redirect and change direction. He's got that really well, and he's got great makeup speed. Something else you need for a DB, right? A lot of the times where you might end up out of phase, a little bit out of position. He's got serious next gear with makeup speed as well. So yeah, I just think that no matter what you're looking at, which elite trait that you want to identify for him, so many of them project to be a high-level cornerback. So I loved what I saw from the young man. I really do.
All right, those are all coming up in the next 2 weeks with the Longhorns on the recruiting trail. I believe, Matthew, Advanced Pain Care, we need to hear, because somebody just asked on the chat line, when's Vince Young coming on the Third and Longhorn podcast? maybe soon here, but can we hear from our friends at Advanced Pain Care, Colt and Vince, and do not put the pain treatments off.
Pros know the pain stops here.
Physical therapy helps me as an athlete then and now. And do I still need therapy? Yes. And Advanced Pain Care helps with that.
Injuries will stack up. They'll add up. You can't let those injuries get you down, and Advanced Pain Care has been very helpful for me.
We can help with whatever's got you down, from nerve damage to our spinal cord stimulator. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Same-day appointments available.
Advanced Pain Care. The pain stops here.
All right, guys, let's dive into Steve Spurrier. Steve Spurrier today, or at least this week, was on a podcast. And see if I can find I don't know if, Matthew, you have a graphic of Steve Spurrier's comments that we can put up, but he was on a podcast. I don't even know the name of it, but here we go. Brett McMurphy tweeted this. Steve Spurrier to the Pat Dooley podcast. There's a name for it, but about Arch Manning. Most people picking Texas to win the SEC. They've got Arch Manning already winning the Heisman too. My question is, if he was this good, how come they let Quinn Ewers play all the time last year and he was a 7th round pick?
Boom.
That's Steve Spurrier, he's never wrong outside the realm of taking a shot. Certainly at the Mannings, if you go back to when he was the coach at Florida and Uncle Peyton was at Tennessee, there was a lot of this going on. And of course, Steve Spurrier is one of Mac Brown's original antagonist, which I always loved. Spurrier loves stirring the drink a little bit. What are your thoughts, guy? I mean, it's going to be out there. I'm sure it'll be talked about. That's one of those, late June talking points that people will use as a conversation starter. How good is Arch Manning? He's first team All-American on a lot of in a lot of places, that despite only making 2 starts. What say you guys on the Quinn Ewers playing all the time last year?
I think Jeff, I think you muted.
Either one.
I did it again. Yeah. So I need to put a 0 on the OSHA sign behind me. I was gonna say, in the vein of the late great Charlie Murphy, Steve Spurrier, habitual pot stirrer.
Yes.
That's true. Yeah, he does. He likes it. But you know what? I will say I get it, because right now all the narrative about Texas is pretty much the same. It is that Texas is the best team in the SEC. Texas is loaded, could win a national title, and Arch Manning is not going to disappoint. He's going to live up to all the expectations. And I think he's probably just tired of hearing that. I'm not saying it ain't true. But it is like everybody has the same narrative about Texas. We're close to the program, and even we have the same narrative about Texas. And we study the program. So I'm telling you, it is true that Texas is going to be really good and Arch is going to be really good. I think he's just trying to come up with a different one. And remember, Aaron Murray had this same kind of take, right? Didn't Aaron Murray, the quarterback who's now an analyst, say something very similar along those lines? First thing, they're just looking for another, kind of take to have on Texas. And I guess this is the other side of the take, is that why didn't he start over Quinn Ewers, which is kind of a silly conversation, because then there are several examples throughout college football history recently you can probably point to where a phenom or a young prodigy of a quarterback had to sit behind a veteran quarterback for a year or maybe even 2 years. I'm not sure, but I guess and maybe this is the only way you can negatively come at Texas right now. Like, if you say you want to hate on Texas, ain't nothing wrong with that, by the way. Love the haters. That's why the Horns Down is still probably the best free marketing you can get in all of sports. At any level, the free Horns. Everybody knows what the Horns Down is. They know it's the Longhorn symbol upside down, right? So if you want to hate on Texas, what's your hater fuel? What is it? Let's just flip it right now. Let's hate on Texas right now, just for a little minute. How do you hate on Texas right now? What do you hate on them with? You ain't won a national title. That's one. What's the other thing? Let's hate on Texas. Seriously,
a new starting quarterback and 4 new offensive linemen. That's it.
Yeah, there you go. And I'm saying it's not a lot. And I think when you're reaching for in media, as we all know, hey, I need something. I want to zig when everybody else is zagging. I want to go against the grain. What's the against the grain take against Texas right now? It's hard to find a good one. Right.
Yeah, well, but I think that, coming from Aaron Murray, that obviously is a take from a quarterback. From Spurrier, he's a coach. He knows how these things operate. I would just say, we all know why Quinn Ewers was the starter, because he helped them win a Big 12 championship, got to the Final Four. it was his team. Everybody in the locker room knew it. Arch Manning knew it. It wasn't a competition. There was no debate. And even after he got hurt, it was his team. That was, there's a lot of guys in that locker room. Jeff, you covered it every single day. There's a lot of guys in the locker room that would have not liked the idea of turning to a new quarterback right in the middle of the season when Quinn Ewers was the guy. I mean, he was the quarterback and did great things at Texas. Injuries, kind of hindered where he could get it, and the Longhorns ended up in the Final Four. That's the reason why, because it was Quinn Ewers' team. And it was Arch Manning's time to learn and be the backup, and he did. That's one of those 2020 hindsight, which we now know the big picture, what's happened in the 6 months post the end of the regular season. But I get it. To your point, Rod, you're right on. You're looking for anti-Texas because there's a lot of good things to say about the Longhorns. They've got a ton of talent. They're seemingly coming into their spot here to make a run. But yes, there's a debate. Will Arch Manning be as advertised? If he is, it's going to be hard to beat this Texas team. Brian Kelly recently said, he would take Garrett Nussmeier because he's been through the battles, and young quarterbacks typically struggle. Sark has said many times, and even Arch Manning has said, I expect to struggle this year. I expect I'm not going to be great every game. I'm going to go through ups and downs. That's the beauty of college football. I just love Spurrier doing, as you said, Jeff, all-time, a decade-long pot.
You got the spoon,
all the way
in the pot, stirring it in the offseason. I mean, Rod's 100% right. Like we've gone down the list of things people in SEC country can knock Texas for, right? It's you ain't ready. You ain't gonna hold up against this schedule. You can't hold up against this line of scrimmage talent. Now it really reminds you kind of like Texas leading up to the national championship in 2005, which at that point, the only thing you could knock Mac for at that point is like, man, the guy can't beat Oklahoma. Go look at their record. Who the hell is beating Oklahoma? Not a lot of people were. Oh, Sark can't beat Kirby, can't beat Georgia. Who has beaten Georgia in the last 4 or 5 years? That list isn't very big.
Yeah. You're right about that.
Well, that tweet and that podcast visit, and I can't wait. We're 3 weeks to SEC Media Days, guys. And, July 14th, 15th. Texas will be there the 15th. There's been confirmation that Arch Manning will be there. And, come on. Talk about get your popcorn ready. That's going to be last check because I've got my credentials in place to be there for the week. I think it's 1,200 plus media members will be there for that, 1,200 plus from around the world, around the country. So that and Arch Manning, can you imagine that? You see that throng and Sark and all these conversations, all that is going to be asked, and it's going to be pretty compelling to hear how Arch handles it and deals with it. And, here we go. That'll be, we're 60 days to the start of the 0 week. We're 67 to the start of the Longhorn season and the Ohio State game. But we're 3 weeks to where Arch Manning's going to be straight in the face of all the cameras. That's going to be great to see based on those tweets, those conversations. That's really all you can do. And Arch will handle like a pro, but man, the spotlight is going to be, Beatles-like, it feels like to me. I don't know. I can't wait to be there and see it.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to be drawing straws, the OTF crew is, and whoever draws a short straw is going to have to all right, you get in the circus, you got to follow Arch around all day. Everywhere he goes, you got to be a part of the circus. So I wouldn't mind it because when are you realistically going to see this again?
No, it's a scene.
Yeah. Never. Yeah, and we haven't seen it before that. It's never because we've never seen the build of the Manning. You got the third generation of a Manning, right? So I don't know if we would have had the anticipation and the build up and all like the propaganda associated with it. You have to have that first, like the first family of football, like have that name. Nobody's ever had that. Even the Mannings before him didn't have the prior Mannings to help build the expectation that a Manning never disappoints. And once you get a Manning, they're going to be as good as as advertised, right? Eli, Peyton, going all the way back to Archie. So that's what people are saying about Arch. And so and it's Texas, combine that brand, which is also one of the biggest brands in sports. Yeah, I know we got Tebow was up there, of course, and Johnny Football. I mean, these guys were part of some circus atmospheres. It's going to be pretty circus atmosphere like, man. It's going to be crazy. I just build up, and he doesn't give you anything outside of those structured interviews, right? Like he don't do you a damn thing on social media. Really, every now and then there's an advertisement or an endorsement here or there, and as a, another interview that he may do for a company. It's very little that you get from Arch. You get the trip to St. Louis, right? That was fun, right? Why was it so fun? Because we don't get a lot from Arch.
Yeah.
You don't get a lot. They're very careful about what they give to the media from Arch. I think that's by design from the Manning family. I think it's by design from Texas and John Bianchi as well, that they want to somewhat be able to control not the messaging, but what the perception and what is available to us for Manning. But pretty soon they won't be able to stop it. Nobody.
No. And it starts 3 weeks from today, July 15th. It's going to be something else. And you're right. I mean, since his uncles went on to both win Super Bowls and multiple Super Bowls in both cases, and Archie was Archie. God, there's going to be people at SEC Media Days and old timers that have covered all three of them, right? And they've been through all of it. This is the grandson. Here he comes. This is the legacy. I was there with Ole Miss with Archie way back in the day. And that's the cool part. Then there's the ridiculous part, which we're going to get to, and all get to see. But it's a scene that you want to kind of document and remember and be a part of, because Quinn Ewers last year, I remember him showing up in his cowboy hat. He had his big belt buckle. He was the focal point, the story on that Tuesday. But there were the snickers and poser. He's new. He can't handle the SEC. All this stuff. Well, now there's no doubt. You guys just said it about Texas. They've torn down all the barriers and the conversations. So now it's just Art showing up with Sark, and it's pretty incredible. I will say that as someone who's been around this for a long time, they're going to walk in there at some level as the favorite and the big dog among Alabama, among Georgia, even though they didn't win the SEC last year. We know that, but just the perception wise, the way it'll be treated by ESPN and the SEC network, they're going to walk in there with Arch and Sark and his confidence level and everything you just learned and heard on the Third and Longhorn podcast, Rod. Within the second SEC Media Days, they're going to be kind of the big dog, which is, I don't know that you would have scripted that a few years ago.
No, remember CDC got in a little hot water. Longhorn fans talking about the David and Goliath thing, and you can't be David, got to be Goliath, and Longhorn fans was like, what? We didn't get it. Well, this is kind of what he's talking about. Like Texas, you should always end up being like the favorite, and you being the underdog. Remember Tom Herman was raised the underdog, and we were like, yeah, that's cool, but Texas shouldn't be the underdog that often.
Right.
Like, why the hell you shouldn't be the underdog that often? You should be the underdog like twice a year, maybe. Now you got the playoffs, maybe 3 to 4 times, but you're Texas. You're the big dog. You're the big dog. You're supposed to enjoy the big dog status and big dog perks. And when you walk in, everybody's like, that's a big dog right there. Your mascot is bigger than everybody else's damn mascot. You're the big dog. And this is where Texas is back again now. When they walk in, it's like, oh, big dog status. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, because I know last year my observation of my first SEC Media Days in Dallas, Jeff, was, Texas, we've covered it forever. It's hubris. Texas has cockiness to it, whether it's they're earning it on the field or not. There's the Texas brand, and it's arrogant. But then you run into the SEC, and it's all arrogance. Everybody's arrogant. It's great. It's this conflict of arrogance meets arrogance at a high level. But to accomplish what they did in the first year and then come back 1 year later as they'll be voted the favorite to win the conference, I think, by the media, whether that doesn't mean anything. But at the same time, that's saying what, to Rod's point. I mean, the arrogance has been earned now to where they can walk in. I'm give you my observations while we're there here on that Tuesday night. And I'm fascinated to watch it, because to see it last year, the uncertainty and how would Texas handle it, and then Oklahoma was there too, but no one talks about Oklahoma. No one was talking about Oklahoma last year. They were new too, and now no one's going to be talking about OU this year. They're on one of the last days. I'm just fascinated by that how the 1,200. I'm sure by the time we get to July 14th, might be 1,500 assembled media there. That's going to be a scene. That's going to be something to see for Texas. And then the question marching forward will be, can they back it up? Can they go deliver? And boy, we can't wait to cover it here on the On Texas Football Channel. That's a lot of fun. There he is. Rod's got the helmet on.
I think this goes back
to Aloha Traveler. I apologize. I just saw it. We were talking. I missed it. There you go. Boom. Thank you, Aloha Traveler. Says Aloha Rod. That third Longhorn was amazing. Great insight from Coach. Appreciate you and the team for making that happen. We're so lucky to have him leading our team. That man is building something special and unique in Austin. Aloha Traveler. honestly, that is exactly the impression I got when I left. Because, the interview is great because you can do, it's kind of the behind the scenes stuff. So talk to Sark a little bit before, get to talk to him a little bit afterwards. But he did say that it was important to him to do Third and Longhorn to give back to the former players who were obviously starting their own business, having their post-football lives and finding a kind of a new identity in the business world, and that it was important for him to be able to help with that in any way that he could. That meant a lot to me personally, just as a former player, that in the macro of everything that he looks at now as the CEO, that you do consider that the former players, because one day your players are going to be former players. So you should care about how former players are treated within the program and if they are shown enough love, and that matters to him. And I think that was important for me. But also about the vision, I'll say this. Because I ask football questions. You guys know me. Some of my questions didn't even get approved because I'm asking way too many football questions. I have to tell y'all the truth. I sent some questions in, and they're like, dude, you ain't going to answer that. That's like stuff that Georgia wants to know. You're asking questions. Ain't nobody answer that. And he's right. They're right. I mean, I got to throw it out there. But they did answer some of my football questions, a couple of them. And two things. I'm probably going to do a breakdown about this either with Jeff on Football Theory or maybe on Sunday School. What makes Sark such a elite offensive mind or a brilliant offensive mind. And he gave us the skinny. And I thought about this because and you've heard me say this before, Jeff. I said, man, the thing about Sark's offense is that it's an amalgamation, a collection of cheat codes, right? And force multipliers, all these different things, the motion, the misdirection, the RPOs, the play action pass, all these different deception elements. And I said, a lot of it feels like to me, he's just doing it to figure out what the rules of the defense are, and then how we can violate those rules, because all rules are built on defense. All defense are built on rules that you obviously have to abide by so that everybody's on the same page. And he said, that's why he said, I am able to execute with precision and be a lethal and prolific offense. He said, because I learned defense from the two greats, from Pete Carroll and from Nick Saban. Two guys who changed defense at their respective levels, right? Pete Carroll did it at the college and the pro level, especially with the Legion of Boom, and Nick Saban, of course, greatest defensive mind in history of college football. He said, they taught me defense. And that's why my offense is so good. He said, because when I'm running plays, we're not just running plays because I got a script of plays that I like to run, and this is a cool looking play. This is a cool looking design. I did it because it looks cool. No. He did it because he's trying to figure out what the rules of the defense are, and the rules that bind the structural integrity of your defense. And once he figures out those rules, as Jeff Howe said, he's going to be an habitual rule breaker. He's going to break your rules over and over and over and over and over again. And one thing he said that was really funny, he said, honestly, the defense that give them the most problems are the ones that have flimsy rules, or the ones that are just chaotic. And they don't really have rules at all. They just got guys that's free flowing, doing what the hell they want to do all the time. Or their rules change so much based on the defense that there's no thread that you can find that, okay, they always do this in this situation. And I started to ask him, like, oh, what defensive coordinators are those? But I think I know. But so that's what I found that's the source of his offensive genius, guys, is actually his defensive knowledge.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what I've said about the Belichickian theory. My Belichickian theory is that I want a coach who has experience in more than one phase of the game. There are three phases. Most coaches, 70% of them, they have really almost no experience in other than their phase of the game. They're the offense or defense, whatever their expertise is. But man, think about it. The reason he's so good is because he knows about Tampa 2, and he knows about all the cover 4 and quarters. He knows intimately the details of those defenses. And a lot of the defenses in college football have been essentially just taken from what Nick Saban did in his time. And then now what Kirby Smart has done, which is also a Nick Saban disciple, right? And then all the other guys. So a lot of it comes from a lot of people taken from the GOAT. So that was something football-wise that told me, damn, this is the guy. Like he's the guy that's going to lead us. And one more little nugget. He's helping build the defense based on that knowledge. He's building that defense based on, basically, he's constructing his defense to defend his offense, which is an offense that is built on essentially violating the rules of modern defense. And how do I know this? Because his defense now is going to be malleable and more positionless. You see it? You see it?
So, you don't give up the cheat codes. You don't give up the rules.
Yes, exactly. Nobody figures out your rules because I'm moving Trey Moore from edge to linebacker. I got Colin Simmons moving up, and I got Anthony Hill doing this. So nobody knows what your rules are. They're like, I don't know what the hell that rules are, man. They got too many different rules. They got different rules for this guy, but he's playing different positions. They got this position flex guy. They got Jelani McDonald doing this. Look how big the safeties are they're recruiting now. Guys that can come down in the box, play in the box as linebacker. This is why now I'm excited about where Texas is going, because I now believe we have a true football theorist as our head coach. A football theorist, someone who studies the game, studies the trends, the patterns of the game at the college and the pro level, because they're all connected now. All right, to see not only where the game has gone, like where it's been, but also be able to predict where it's going so that you can now be ahead. All right. And you can get a jump start and you get a head start and hopefully maybe even start the next evolutionary trend in the game. Well, people are coming to your school and your defense and your program to go, hey, man, how'd you guys defend this so well and do this so well? We need to know your secrets. That is what now I think that is taking Sark's coaching acumen, in my opinion, to an elite level. That's why I think he's still growing as a coach, guys. It's still evolving, and we're watching it real time.
Great stuff right there. Thank you, Aloha Traveler. That is so kind, and we appreciate you on a Tuesday night and Rod's Insights. Can't wait to watch the whole Third and Longhorn podcast myself, which we started the show with here tonight, the stream, about an hour and 1 minute ago. But you called it the Belichickian theory, Rod. And Jeff, you can pick up on this. I think that's fascinating because Bill Belichick has said, Tom Brady has said that their greatness for 2 decades was, Belichick knew the defense, but he wanted to understand how Tom saw the offense, right? And what was he, Tom, when you see this defense, how are you attacking Ed Reed or how are you attacking Ray Lewis? Like, what does that mean? They would pick each other's brains for hours at a time because that would help Belichick try to get in the head of other quarterbacks. And that's the kind of stuff that if Sark, to what Rod just said, is in PK's ear saying, okay, man, look, this is what is going to give them nightmares. This is the nightmare fuel for them because I deal with it. That's high level stuff of, chess versus checkers. And we're even above that because now Texas has as good a chess pieces as anybody in the country. Now you're playing, your offense and your defensive coordinator are working in concert to try to build something that, there are no cheat codes to at some level. I think that's pretty fascinating football theory.
This gives me the most optimism I've had for Sark in terms of, the in-game part of it. Because from what you just described, Rod, Sark is evolving from a coach that was playing the hand in terms of, all right, on third and medium, this is probably the front they're going to be in. This is probably the coverage they're going to be in, based on just football tendency. No, now he's learning instead of playing the hand, I got to play the man. Mm-hmm. What are Kirby Smart's tendencies going to be in this situation? Not what football dictates you should do here. Mm-hmm. What is Kirby Smart going to bring on third and medium? What is Matt Patricia? What coverage does he like in the red zone and goal line situations? Yeah. Like, I know that sounds simple, but it's not just, all right, well, we're in goal line. They could run this. We'll run this. No, it's like really getting into the study of the man, not just the scheme you're going against.
Totally. Yeah. Yep.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, let me tell you about Mark Saunders at Allstate. Are you in good hands? Here we are, summertime, vacations, maybe out to your vacation house. If you've got one, that'd be great. Rental condos, all those things. Mark Saunders, who is a Texas alum, of course, 35 plus years of experience now. Is everything covered? Everything good? Got storms, summer storms, hurricane season right around the corner. Make sure with Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders, you are. It's a quick call to his office tomorrow, 512-218-8571, and you'll feel better as you go to bed each night knowing everything is covered, and all it takes is that simple phone call. And he is a Longhorn, fanatic and fan, and on Texas football, you can talk all things Texas with Mark Saunders. He's the only insurance agent you'll need. Everything from your home, car, boats, motorcycles, RVs, second homes, ATVs, the whole bit. If you're looking, especially someone local to Austin and Round Rock, Travis and Williamson County, please call Mark and take that first step with the quick phone call. 218-8571. Are you in good hands? With more than 35 years of experience, you will be with the Texas alum Mark Saunders. Awesome stuff. It has led to some big conversations on the comment line, and the conversation will take your questions if you have them. But that was good stuff right there. Just watch the Third and Longhorn with Sark. Excellent interview, Rod. Sark pitch about ATX and UT. Whoa. Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, I'm telling you got to go watch his pitch. He essentially, I don't even remember what the question was, but he literally just laid out his sales pitch, and it was awesome. Like, it was unbelievable. And I thought to myself, I wonder who's got a better sales pitch in the country than that. I mean,
well, and I know our friend Nick Shuley, our fellow friend, said he was going to clip that and send it over to the Austin Convention and Visitors Bureau. Let them have that.
Yeah.
Right?
He had stats there. He had stats and everything, man. It was great. The Lotion Boy said, "Do you think there are any true freshmen who can make an instant impact?" Oh, yeah, a couple.
We talked about that many times, but we're revisiting Justice Terry name, Nick Townsend. You mentioned Jeff, Jonah Williams, just because he's a freak's freak. One of the receivers potentially, Jamie French, and or one of the receivers.
Dalen McCutcheon was ahead of all those guys during the spring. So, and James Simon, because said it before, I'll say it again, man, running back is typically the one position of all the position groups for freshmen. That's typically the one guys adjust to quicker than others. So okay. I know you're deep at running back, but man, we've heard a lot of really good stuff about James Simon since he got to campus.
You're deep at running back, carries early. There will be some carries early into some of those obviously non-conference games, and until they get Cedric Baxter like 100%. So there'll be some carries where a young back could prove themselves potentially.
Well, and to my thought to Lotion Boy Rod, and you just talked to Sark this week, so I'll see to you, but it feels like, and you and I us three have been talking about this for a long time. Texas doesn't need to force a freshman onto the field. If he earns his way in there, great. But this is where Nick Saban used to brag about, on his sales pitch to recruits at Alabama. And I got NFL scouts at my practices, guys. I mean, these guys are coming to watch, and they're not watching the upperclassmen. They can see the game film on that. They want to see you guys that are freshmen and sophomores. That's right. That's a selling pitch. And, maybe this is a year or a cycle where you don't really need a freshman. If he, as we talked about last Tuesday, if Jonah Williams can impact special teams as a returner or blocking kicks or one of those things, but you really don't see a place where you have to have a guy run in, and because Longhorn fans are so used to that. God, we need to plug and play somebody quickly. Well, maybe you're to a point in your development of your program that you actually don't need that.
Yeah, and Sark has done a good job though, right, Jeff? Of those, he's got one or two of those guys every year. Mm-hmm. But to E's point, he's never had the roster this stacked.
Yeah,
or maybe now you're at the point now where you don't need it. But when Sark first got here, they would have an impact freshman on damn near every year. You had one of those guys.
You had Xavier Worthy year one, Kelvin Banks year two, Anthony Hill in 23, and then Colin Simmons last year.
Yeah, every year.
But the reason was they were better than anybody else. Maybe these guys.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think one or two guys, but I'm with you. I think he's right. I think at this point, those guys, you don't need them. If they can crack this roster and crack like the starting lineup or in the rotation, it means that they are they have an extremely accelerated rate of development. Like they are.
Yeah, they're that good. Because I always think the visual for in my brain is you talking about when Dwayne Aquino would stack you guys starters in one row, you go row by row.
Yep.
I ain't giving up my row, not to you, young guys.
Exactly. And you got a lot of those guys now in every room, pretty much stacked like that. So, but I think there'll be a couple of guys who will. Like I said, I like the Jonah Williams punt return thing that we've discussed, and that NASCAR package. I think there might be a Justice Terry can maybe find a role on there or something. Young guy potentially. It depends, but I'm with E. I don't think it's necessary anymore.
The impact, you'll have to kind of rework the way you use that word, because to me, an instant impact guy, if you're a freshman who gets non-special team snaps against Ohio State, you're a dude. You're special, and you got the potential to be. So I would keep track of those guys and then monitor those guys over the next 3 non-conference games and see how much they play.
Who was that versus Michigan? Remember Jared Gibson played versus Michigan because you did.
Yeah. We got Colin Simmons got some high leverage snaps against Michigan.
He did, 100%. And I think it's another thing to follow. I mean, if the question is not impact freshman, but impact newcomer that wasn't here last year, gosh, it might be whoever wins the backup quarterback job, right? I mean, who if Arch Manning gets hurt, turns his ankle, and he's going to be out for a couple series, who goes in? Is that Trey Moore or Trey Owens, I should say, or is that the transfer from Troy? You know, who is the backup quarterback? That might be as important as any as far as impact goes to their 2025 season.
I think it depends on what the situation is and what point in the season are we talking about.
Yeah, and how serious the injury is.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's because who's going to – and that's a conversation they're having all over the country with the transfer portal is how good's your backup? How good is your next guy? Because, Rod, you've given the numbers a million times about starting quarterbacks get hurt, and especially when you're playing 16, 17 games potentially. Who is that guy? That you've talked about impact and winning a game and being Malik Murphy or Shane Buechele in a must-have-you role. That's going to be really, really critical to the Longhorns. Now, Trey Owens has been here for a minute. KJ Lacey is a freshman, and they brought in the newcomer whose name I have not. What's that? Caldwell. Matthew Caldwell. Yeah, but who is that guy? That could be critical to success if you're wanting to win national championships, SEC championships. All right, Rod, tell them one more time about Andy Ludicky, and we'll wrap things up with a couple more questions and get on out of here.
Yes, sir. If you're looking to diversify, you may be someone like myself that has their hands in different businesses. Well, Andy and his team can help you find different businesses that will fit your time allotment and your financial goals. You can give him a call today, 404-973-9901. If you've been stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO, no control over the money you make or your schedule in general, reach out to Andy and his team. They'll take you through a very detailed process that will fit your skill sets and your financial goals, and find you different businesses that will be compatible with your goals as well. Franchise ownership isn't for everyone, but if you have a desire to take control of your financial destiny, just reach out to Andy today at 404-973-9901, or you can reach out at Andy@myperfectfranchise.net. That's Andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Thank you very much to Andy Ludicky for sponsoring our Tuesday night live stream.
And My Perfect Franchise right there is the top corner there. We appreciate them very much. All right. Any questions, Matthew, we need to sift through and have answers to before we wrap things up and get you ready for a Wednesday into Coffee and Football tomorrow morning? And it says, Jeff, if Texas was to land 3 to 5 of the announcing this week, which 3 would you want?
Give me Malachi Lee, Damari Simeon, and I don't care who the third is. Give me a big offensive tackle and another interior defensive lineman. I almost don't care who the third is. I mean, if we're going hypothetical, yeah, if you can land Xavier Crowell and wrap up running back recruiting before the month of July, then that'd be awesome. Gonna be enough.
With that in mind, can Matthew put up that graph one more time, and we'll just remind people what's coming tomorrow and this week, because that's top of mind. Xavier Crowell, Chase Calicut, Malachi Lee. You mentioned the big Hawaiian 85-inch reach, for crying out loud.
That's
Damari
crazy.
Simeon and Xavier Griffin all this week or into the weekend.
It's crazy.
Yeah, like I said, give me Simeon and Lee for sure. And then I mean, Xavier Crowell was really good. It's a toss-up at that point between Crowell and Griffin.
Okay, well then there you go. We'll have next Tuesday to chat about the next crop, because that will be July the 1st. As a matter of fact, next Tuesday will be the first day of the new world order of college football. Rod?
I don't think people realize how long 85-inch wingspan is, though.
I don't know.
That's longer than Kevin Durant, guys. Kevin Durant's not that tall.
Kevin Durant's wingspan is like 80. He's like
80. Like Kevin Durant, period. Right? Kevin Durant is what? How long? Kevin Durant 6'11". I'm talking about his wingspan is taller than Kevin. It's longer than Kevin Durant is tall. His wingspan is longer than Kevin Durant is tall. Is my point.
Yeah.
That's how long yeah, like
his if that's true, his fingertips have to be down by his kneecaps, for crying out loud. That's crazy.
That's crazy. Is that real?
That's the word. That's the word on the street.
That's something.
That's
an alien. That's an alien.
That's an alien. All right, guys.
Well, we'll see. If he gets to Texas and they measure the wingspan, if you're in like the mid 80s, right around there, then you got a long enough wingspan.
No, yeah, you're a freak.
you're plenty. All right, guys, appreciate it. Awesome stuff. Longhorns. By next Tuesday, we'll be into the House settlement era, which obviously we'll talk about. Then it's SEC Media Days, a couple weeks out from that, and we're counting down days 67 to the Ohio State game. The recruiting never stops. The conversation never stops. Make sure you lock it in here, of course, on YouTube and the On Texas Football channel. Like and subscribe. And come on in tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock for coffee and football, or just after. They'll have the very, very latest with Jerry and the team. Guys, thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks, E. Great job.
Welcome.